Welcome into another edition of the Kevin and Jason Show. I'm your host today, Kevin Misery, along with Jason Shannon. As always, we're presented by Cover One for a really great show for you today. We're going to go through depth chart day. It is depth chart day, so we're going to talk about that. Going to get into that Colts preview. There is a live football game on Thursday, so we're going to get into that for Kids Day game here in Buffalo, as well as question and answers. Got a lot of those here on the fold. Lots to pick through. Lots of people interacting with us today. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing great. We are just days away from the preseason opener, and we got a new depth chart. Those are always exciting just to pick apart the little bits and pieces that are different from the last time. Definitely going to over and analyze that a little bit, see if we get any indications as far as who's making this team, who's not making this team, who's really going to have to show out in these preseason games. And I'm excited to give it there. And I've been doing some little bit of Colts digging, so I can tell you what they're going to be doing, maybe a couple of their battles as well at the end of the show, just so you know what's going on both sides of the ball. So it's exciting, 3 days
Definitely is an
away.
exciting time. It's finally here. I mean, training camp did start, a couple weeks ago, but I think it's finally the week with depth chart, with game playing, and it's a little bit more serious now. So I think that's what makes this week so good. And I think honestly, the interaction's been great. We've been getting more questions. I think people are finally, ready. Honestly, I think it's usually like August 1st or August 2nd, maybe the 31st, where camp normally starts. It was a little early this year, and I think people are a little caught off guard. And then with the limited practice, I think it'll take a game for everyone to really know that it's back. And after that Hall of Fame game, and then the Bills, or most of the league, starts up on this week, which would be Thursday. So I think that'll bring a lot of real good interaction to football. So I mean, first and foremost, it was depth chart day, and a lot of good, some pretty good nuggets. I mean, you're not going to get anything groundbreaking off of depth chart day,
Nothing
but
earth shattering, but
no, but you're going to
yeah.
get more backup stuff than you are. That's where you're going to really see where they, more 53 man potential than you're going to get, obviously, how much Frank Gore is going to run the ball or Devin Singletary. You're going to get more. Where might they have Dawson Knox, or might they have the linemen that are all battling? Where might they have those corners? I think that's a little bit more what you can read into it, at least to starting point for the game, and it will get tweaked, but at least the starting point. And there's some interesting stuff going on. We'll start on the O line, as that's kind of the most interesting. Obviously, Feliciano is your starting right guard in the original depth chart. Not too much of a shocker, but there has been some rotation forwards listed as your starting right tackle. But behind them is where it gets interesting. You got Wyatt Teller as the backup right guard. You got Nsekhe as the backup right tackle, and Spencer Long as the backup center. Waddell's still on it as the backup left tackle, and then Ike Boettger as the backup left guard. They really like Booker. I mean, they liked him. They claimed him. They lost him. They were upset about it, and they claimed him back when KC tried to make a move. So he's a guy that's a sneaky guy, especially with the Waddell injury, with the Searles cut and / injury. He's a guy that he's going to make a sneaky play for it, especially if there's like one more injury along this. He's got a real shot at it, especially listed above Dukas. Bodine's on the third team. Really nothing behind that to be worried about. And I think Wesley also benefits from the Waddell injury, as he's fighting with Connor McDermott, both listed as third teamers now, but they got versatility out of Wesley. Love his size. The second that he was cut by, I believe, the Colts. He's been cut a few times. I believe the Colts most recently. They just claimed right away, like they could not even risk Wesley being claimed somewhere else. He spent a lot of the season on the Bills practice squad last year. So they really like this guy. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him sneak on now if they don't make another move. Real briefly, they did bring in Sam Young for workout. So we'll see if that amounts to anything. 32-year-old who's played from 2011 to 2013 in Buffalo. Any of those initial offensive line things jump out at you off that initial ranking?
Well, unfortunately, it's already kind of dated right now, and I think there might have been some changes that were made due to that now season. We haven't been on since, this morning when it was determined that L.A. Waddle is out for the year. He was going to be the swing tackle for this team, possibly maybe a fourth tackle. And now I think we have to start thinking about different ways to set up the team. Who's going to make the, 9 guys probably. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a shift. We saw Cody Ford today as a right guard for the first time. with Ty Nsekhe playing right tackle. That could just because Feliciano is hurt. He's like slowly coming back right now. I think there's still a big rotation. The fact that they listed the right side as Feliciano and Ford still at tackle is probably still telling. I don't want to put all of the world into the unofficial depth chart compiled by the Bills communications staff.
Right.
However, things are on paper for a reason. And I think that's maybe where they feel the most comfortable right now. But we'll see, whether we're going to move Nsekhe up, whether it's still going to be Feliciano at right guard.
Right.
I really don't think they want to yank Ford back and forth between guard and tackle as a rookie. We're going to see over the next few days. We're going to see probably during the preseason game. I don't think they put him at guard for a day to put him back at tackle. Maybe they wanted to see a little bit, but if you see a couple of days of that may be, they may be looking at him to start at right guard at this position. So it's interesting. I think it was slightly interesting that Spencer Long was listed as the backup center over Russell Bodine because Bodine seemed to be getting those second snaps, but you also can't tell with Long nursing some injuries and also moving between guard and center based on availability. So, you can get a little bit out of where they put people right now, but I do think that they're really still looking for their best five and really for their best roster. And, as you've already seen, this thing changes by the day. So it's interesting. I'm not going to take nothing out of it, but I'm not going to bet the farm on what's on this piece of paper right now, compiled by the Bills communication staff on official depth chart.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I think I'm kind of in the middle on it. I think that there is some, this is just by the communications, but I do think that they're talking. They don't release these often, and quite frankly, they don't even change them during the year. So there is some credence to the initial what they think of each player. I mean, you're not going to say, Ike Bodiger is going to make the team over Russell Bodine because he's number two. I do think that you're above Vlad Ducasse. I think you can look at it situationally and say you're above Vlad Ducasse. It's going to take. I don't think they're going to keep Vlad Ducasse over a cheaper player without a lot of change here in the 4 preseason games. So I think you can take that away, that it would take something to make him make it over someone above him. But I thought the offensive line's the interesting wide receiver. Nothing really crazy there. This top 6 everyone's talking about with Ray McLeod sneaking in there. You got a little bit interesting. Cam Phillips is above Nick Easley, Duke Williams, and Victor Bolden. Sills, they do have above that too on the 3rd team. Isaiah McKenzie as well. So they're in the top 9. 3 most likely to fight out for someone on the spot. But Duke Williams made a great play in the end zone today. He does something that none of the other receivers do. Maybe none of the other receivers do. Let's go up and get the ball. And they've always seemed to roster someone like that. So we'll see.
It seems like Sills was going to be that guy. And so far, the reports from camp are that he isn't yet, that he doesn't have the strength to do that. And meanwhile, Duke Williams, even though it was in Canada, has been a pro player for multiple years now and does have that physical ability to do that. And looks a little like a tight end at times. So, I understand where you're coming from there.
And can do it, and also definitely can play teams. It's big and physical. So we'll see. I mean, that's an interesting. If they kept 7, if for some reason they wanted to keep 7, especially with the versatility out of a couple of them, Andre Roberts being a teams guy, and Duke Williams showing he can play teams. I mean, if he can make the team based on his special teams ability, it's no different than keeping another safety. If they think that he would get claimed, if they think he can present something on an active game day roster, they'll absolutely tweak their numbers to have. I believe the Bills were heavy on receiver at times, even with bad ones last year. They seem to always. I think they had 7 at times. Just trying the Isaiah McKenzie's out and all the other different practice squad players they tried. So I'm not going to be shocked to see them do something like that, especially if they feel line is set with 9 guys and go 3 with tight end and maybe make a move on Patrick DeMarco. I mean, there's plenty of ways to go that would keep. You could keep McLeod and Duke Williams or some variation of that. And practice squad eligibility, unfortunately, plays a role in it for some of these guys that might be on the bubble. They might, decide, hey, we can stash him on the squad. Duke Williams might get claimed and he could pick where he wants to go. That could matter a little bit. But defensively, you had a little bit of interesting. I mean, defensive lines pretty much is what it is with the 8. Mike Love, obviously, it's been above Yarbrough. He has a path to the roster.
It's official now. Yeah.
Don't really see them keeping 9 defensive linemen unless they really want to see something from Daryl Johnson. He's practice squad all the way. unless he shows out and they can't sneak him through. That would be one of those other can't sneak him through the practice squad scenarios. Linebacker set at 6. I mean, it is that just is kind of set. Maurice Alexander's got a place. Julian Stanford seems to be, and Corey Thompson seem to be the 3. Don't know what's going to go with Voshon Joseph. He's probably the most interesting in the front 7 in terms of roster.
He's a drafted player. He's a fifth round. It's not a ton of 5th round. It's not a guarantee to make a team, but
rare.
I guess it's at 80% of them make the first team, 75% of them. So
yeah, I would say that. Maybe
that's it. That I'd say,
more.
Especially considering his profile coming from a big school and kind of the attention he got is, possibly like a day 2 pick going to the draft. I would say he is not sneakable unless they want to plant a dirty story on him or something. Like,
yeah, no, he's practice squad.
I think Tyrell Dodson is a guy that they've kept around for a reason, and they have talked about him even over some other linemen or over some other linebackers and defensive players. I think that's a practice squad, like pretty close to guarantee. But Voshon will be interesting because he was drafted high enough where you really do have to make that determination of how much do we really want him, how much do we want to sneak him on the squad, and do we think we'll be able to do it? And right now, I don't think we'll be able to sneak him through.
No, definitely not. No, team will take a shot on them. So that'll be an interesting. So I mean, they might not have a chance for Daryl Johnson to make the team. So you're going to have to try to squad them. And I mean, might be the year they keep 7 linebacker. Doesn't really happen. They don't for some reason. McDermott has his 3, has maybe a guy as a backup and a couple special teamers. That's really what he's always gone to at that position. So what they do with Joseph, I think it's telling that Maurice Alexander, a special teamer, and Corey Thompson are above him. So we'll see if that changes and they can't find a spot for him and might be exposed to waivers. Safety's pretty straightforward with Poyer and Hyde. Obviously, Coleman's the number 3, and I guess Marlowe at this point is beating out the draft pick Johnson and Abraham Wallace listed as a free safety. Nickel cornerback's interesting.
Like the entire day 3.
They might, which is generally an okay sign. I don't think it means.
It's a strong roster, but then you have the years where I don't know, even bad Bills teams used to do it, and I just felt like that's a waste of picks, whether you trade them away or it just seems like I don't think before we even saw anything, I don't think there were a lot of people predicting that Daryl Johnson was going to make the team, or even that Jaquan Johnson was going to have a tough time making the team. Like if he can't beat out Dean Marlowe, the human waiver wire, I don't even know what we're doing with the pick. Maybe there just aren't enough draftable players, but it just seems like every year we're just getting rid of these 6th and 7ths and using them on, we used it on 2 receivers last year and got maybe half a receiver here. Maybe Ray McLeod's going to vindicate him here, and
Foster, right?
Okay. So we have the undrafteds. Yeah, I would say Foster and Cam Phillips are borderline more
borderline
players than McLeod or definitely Prohl.
Yeah, they definitely had more ability than Prohl did. So they're priority free agents.
I just don't like seeing. But here's the thing: like our 4th safety position or 5th and 6th linebacker positions, they're not that strong. Like they're the strongest we have here. But the fact that we can draft a guy in the 5th round in this linebacker group and him probably not make the team isn't really a good sign. I don't think. I mean, I know late round picks are late round picks, but I mean, it's a 5th.
Yeah, it's questionable, but this is from the regime that spends 7th on Buddy's wide receiver son and guy with 0 intangibles in McLeod. Whether he develops or not, I don't know. It's not for me to argue today.
It seems like he's a hard worker, but
wasn't
good pick at the time. But
undrafted free agent though, he was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah. But I mean, our backup linebackers are Mo Alexander, Julian Stanford, Corey Thompson. Like whether or not they're doing well in camp right now, whether McDermott likes them a little bit, there should be a room for a 5th round pick at linebacker for an SEC school on this team. And I think that's a failure of evaluation if you can't even have him stick around for a year. I don't.
Yeah, if your plan was to sneak him on the squad, I think 6, you're starting to get into range to be able to do that. But spending, what was probably like a top 160 pick.
I mean, he was a big time college football player. Like it's hard. Maybe there's so much tape on him that people didn't like him as much. But I mean, that's a guy that was talked about as a 2nd or 3rd round pick for. a decent portion of the process.
Well, there's no room for Johnson, who's a seventh round pick. There's no room
Sure.
for Jaquan Johnson, who was a sixth round pick, and their
Should be
other
able to beat Dean Marlowe, but that's fine,
who
especially
was their
when
other
you move
seventh?
Neil out of there. Um,
Who else did they take? Because did they have two, or did they end up trading one of those?
Sleeper Sweeney.
Yeah, Sleeper Sweeney. Okay, Sleeper Sweeney's probably going to
That's a
make.
good pick.
Yeah,
Okay.
good pick. He's going to find his way on the roster.
Hopefully.
Then Voshon Joseph's a fifth. He was their only one they had left after they made some moves, right? They only had one at when it was all said and done. So they didn't have a fourth, right? Did they? Yeah, they ended up dishing the fourth.
I think that was in a Knox deal.
Yeah, to get the Knox. So you're talking about really Voshon Joseph being the only kind of one that's on an island of a range to where they had a lot of time to think about it. They clearly targeted him. So at the end of the day, maybe they'll find a spot for him when. Yeah, I mean, really, the three backups are special teamers. Corey Thompson's a young special teamer. Julian Stanford's presents a tiny bit behind Stanford. Behind Edmonds looked okay, better than I thought on defense. And then Marcus Alexander, who's a special teamer to me, old special teamer. So you really have Voshon Joseph, the only youth behind the two starting Milano and Edmonds. Lorenzo's done next year.
Right.
So maybe because of his retirement, it is the 1 year you might keep seven, because if you're going to sink, really, it is three. If you're going to think three, your backup linebackers, special teams, maybe you have to keep seven there.
And they're all going to be able to play special teams too, is the thing.
Right.
I don't think they're worried about that. That's going to come out of your extra receiver or your extra running back, fullback position, or your extra safety or cornerback, whatever. Maybe a Lafayette Pitts, or, as you're probably going to talk about Cam Lewis. Maybe one of those guys doesn't make the team, so we have an extra linebacker. It seems like for 10 years now, and maybe this is just the composition of the league and having 53-man rosters, which is terrible, and having guys that aren't able to, 7 guys that aren't going to be active on game day. It seems like when we have a linebacker go down, like, we have nothing but special teamers and guys that are like completely incapable of playing the position. Like Julian Stanford, for his average play last year, was really kind of a revelation, or really lucky, because I never expect that to happen, because I always expect some undersized, undrafted free agent linebacker who runs down on kicks is going to be the guy filling in for your middle linebacker. And I'm kind of sick of it. Like, I want a guy who can wait in the wings and play, learn how to play linebacker in the offseason, so that maybe when Alexander retires, like, we don't have to go and spend money like the Jets did on CJ Mosley,
Right.
I don't want to overpay for a linebacker. I don't want to overdraft a linebacker. I would say I like the Edmonds pick, but 2 first-round picks on linebackers in 3 years would be a pretty inefficient way of doing things. And considering we're going to need probably a linebacker and a running back next year, I'm not spending my first and second-round picks on those positions. So yeah, I'd love to see us actually take a guy like Voshon Joseph, who is, he's got his flaws, but is a linebacker over a special teamer, and try to develop this guy and maybe have him ready in a year, and maybe even have to not do the 7th linebacker thing, but maybe actually just say, all right, we got to drop Mo Alexander because we just really need to keep this guy. Like, we'll find another guy to go and run down on kicks that get called for touchbacks anyways. Like,
right. Yeah, no,
I think you have to sometimes make that sacrifice, and I'm hoping that when we have Crossman gone this year, maybe we don't keep 14 guys on special teams this year. Maybe we develop a few younger players and have them keep going, because as much as the strategy of signing minimum veteran free agents because they like 28-year-olds over 23-year-olds, your development pipeline is going to be shot when you're trying to get, young guys through.
And they're especially all on 1-year deals too. So even if they're good, I mean, you're back to the drawing board there, because they're on 1-year vet minimums.
We signed 18 free agents this year. Like, we need to keep some of these guys. You can't just eliminate your third day of the draft. Like, how teams stay good is that you can fill in some of these positions. There's a reason that most teams do it that way. So I don't know. That's a little mini rant, but
I think if you just nailed, like, say, someone like Sleeper Sweeney and then one of Voshon and the 2 Johnsons, I think that's all you needed, 2 of the 4. I think that's really
Well, yeah, if you get two extended roster players out of day three, you did a good job. If you get one, you probably did a pretty good job.
right,
But you can't just cut them off the jump immediately. So
because you have
then we
Maurice
get
Alexander, right?
right for Maurice Alexander, and then you go get 3 weeks into the season, and you're signing Keith Fords and stuff because you just dropped your guy that was your
Geldins, yeah,
developmental
because he's
prospect that you scouted all off season and thought he was good enough to draft. But
right.
what do I know? I don't have a GM job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the only, I guess, the final note of the depth chart really is to couple off DB. It's that they have Siren Neal listed as nickel behind Taron Johnson. Obviously, Levi Wallace and Trey White are your starters who've both been good in camp by all accounts, all reports, everything I've seen. Gaines and Johnson have been good. Gaines now banged up with the groin, seems to always have a groin injury. That guy's like a solid football player, but we'll see if he can be ready. If not, I just unfortunately think you cut bait from him and opens the door for Neal to get playing time, opens the door for Kevin Johnson more playing time, and a guy like Cam Lewis to make the team, depending on the injuries to EJ Gaines, because he's going to have injuries plural. Cam Lewis and Denzel Rice are listed above Pitts and Ryan Lewis, who, if I was to do that, if I was to make this prior to this, I would have had Pitts and Lewis above Cam Lewis and Denzel Rice. So it's an interesting flip of, to me, the 4s and the 3s, but it is telling because to me they were working Cam Lewis behind and nickel too in front of a couple guys. When EJ Gaines went out, I guess Cam Lewis was getting a lot of nickel jobs. Now he's one of the main backup boundary corners, so that versatility might find him a role, and he's been sneaky decent. He's been one of the guys they talked about in the press conference and minimal press conference time. So we'll see if Cam Lewis is definitely, I think at this point, bearing a terrible preseason 4 games. Cam Lewis is definitely practice squad, one of their priority practice squad guys. Don't think you'd have to worry about him getting claimed. I don't think.
Unless he shows out in practice.
Unless he shows out and then he makes the roster,
I guess.
Yeah, he makes the roster if he shows out. So I think it's one or the other. You're going to get him on the squad as one of your guys that's going to be called up, technically your quote-unquote 7th corner, or he's going to make the roster. So Cam Lewis, I would imagine, sticking around, has practice squad eligibility over a guy like Pitts, and I don't know if Ryan Lewis still has practice squad, but so he's going to be your pseudo 7th corner based on what happens with EJ Gaines. And if EJ Gaines isn't ready or they gets cut or something happens there, I mean, Cam Lewis is sneaky close to the roster. So that was kind of interesting that for an undrafted free agent that wasn't.
It is a decent indication because you can tell sometimes that they'll leave a less experienced guy behind an experienced guy on the roster, or on these depth charts or whatever, just based on how much they've played. They don't want to ruffle any feathers or move anybody up or down. It's all motivation tactics. This depth chart has no reason for existing other than kind of appease fans and for players to look at it, really. I mean, and there's little things that are probably motivational things. Duke Williams being behind Cam Phillips and David Sills right now, like, I think that's a little motivation ploy. The fact that Eli Harold's behind all of the defensive ends on the roster, including Daryl Johnston and Eddie Yarborough, as a veteran. The fact that you can have a Cam Lewis firmly ahead of Lafayette Pitts and Ryan Lewis, who have both made this team. I think that they do a little bit of motivation with that. And if anything, it is at least an indicator. I'm not going to say that makes Cam Lewis. I mean, it probably makes him more likely to make the team, but it's definitely a good indicator that they think something of him. For what his position, for a decent cornerback for a MAC school, even if it was local, they would already dropped him right now if he wasn't showing out. They have at this point, 9 other veteran cornerbacks on this roster and him.
They liked him because they went out and targeted him. They claimed they got him on the first day of priority free agents. So technically, he was a priority to them to make sure they had. So they liked something about him in their.
If you were an undrafted free agent on this team, you were a priority because there was only 5 of them. So they definitely did. They definitely wanted all of the undrafteds that they went after, whether they worked out or not. Possibly David Sills did not. Everybody saw and embedded what the enthusiasm was towards him. And then maybe there was a little less enthusiasm towards Cam Lewis, but they were still interested. They knew they could probably get him in from being in Buffalo, and they're going to be pleasantly surprised so far. So hoping for some good preseason from him.
Yeah, no, definitely. Man, we'll see. There's always something to talk about that depth chart. There's enough on it. You're not going to get any, oh my God, Singletary's a starting running back. You're not going to get something like that. But there's always some good stuff to take away on that depth chart. There always is decent information, and we're going to revisit it maybe toward cut day. And it won't change. I don't believe it won't change this. So I think it's worth talking about a little bit. Colts preview, they do play Thursday, is something people are looking forward to. They want to see really real football. Josh Allen for at least a quarter. I think it's going to be a decent first opponent. I mean, you're not going to get Andrew Luck for very long, but at least it's a competent offense. You're going to see the defense be able to play them at least for a few series. So I think that's interesting. Jason, what do you got on this Colts preview?
Yeah, to start, I don't think anything's been announced as far as who will or won't play, but it's looking very unlikely that Andrew Luck is going to play in this game.
Oh,
He's had some minor injuries that they're a little worried about. I don't know if he had surgery in the offseason or was coming off of something, but they said that he's progressing slower than he thought. So I think I had seen that. Unless I had confused that with somebody else. I don't know. You're not going to see him for long either way. I know that he had sat out a couple practices. So
yeah, I could see them. I mean, I could see them definitely. The Eagles come from with an Eagles coach. I mean, guy that I think the Eagles don't play anyone in preseason. I could be wrong. I thought them and the Rams started to literally bench your players week 1 of preseason.
Well, certainly nobody played in that that Hall of Fame game. Yeah. So he has a calf injury right now. I thought I was getting him confused with Cam Newton, who also is going through a similar thing with an injury and them being very unsure about it. But right now, the word is that Andrew Luck thinks he'll be ready for week 1 of the regular season, which means he's definitely not going to play in here.
Right.
Moving forward, there's some receivers to watch. It'll be interesting to watch against their depth. They brought in Paris Campbell in the second round, I believe. He's really been the star of their camp, and a lot of the non-first round wide receivers in the draft, which, maybe I would have liked to pick up a couple of them, but you've seen a lot of highlights from Paris Campbell, from Terry McLaurin in Washington, from Kelvin Harmon in Washington, DK Metcalf in Seattle. So it's a little unfortunate we didn't grab
this receiver class was a little better than some thought.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought. I can't believe that they waited on some of these guys, but so he's there. He's been showing out in practice. Penny Art is a really athletic undrafted free agent that I thought was definitely going to get drafted. I think he's going to get a lot of burn here. And then another receiver from last year, Deion Kane, who I think a lot of Bills fans had some interest in, is also here trying to make the team. An interesting battle is at running back for this team. They had Spencer Ware, who looks like he's had a significant injury. They did have 2 former Bills running backs on the roster as of an hour ago. One of them's Jonathan Williams, who you might remember was a former 4th or 5th round pick who got cut after a pretty promising second-year preseason. He is looking at maybe the 4th or 5th running back right now. And then also from last year, who actually got a little bit of run, Keith Ford, was on the team but just got dropped on a waiver claim for Dante Freeman from the Texans. So Keith Ford's now available, which actually creates a little interesting situation if maybe they liked him a little more than Marcus Murphy. We'll see if maybe they try to make a move there. I don't know if they necessarily need another 4th or 5th running back running around in Buffalo, but you never know. They might have liked the guy. Also on the team, playing at 4th quarterback, probably going to be 3rd, and probably get some run tomorrow in Buffalo is Chad Kelly, nephew of Jim Kelly. He is still really trying to make a team and kind of stick in the league, and is probably getting his last chance right now. Finally, on defense, they have a competitive group of cornerbacks that are going to be interesting against our wide receivers. Pierre Desir is definitely the number 1 cornerback there. They have Malik Hooker at free safety, and then there's probably a 2 or 3-way battle for 2 spots between Kenny Moore, Quincy Wilson, and the first pick of the second round from Temple, Rock Ya-Sin. So those are guys to watch. Ya-Sin's a physical corner. It might be interesting to see some of our second-string receivers against him. And other than that, I forgot to mention that their offensive line, even though I don't know how much they're going to play, are very physical and have a reputation as one of the best in the league and probably in the future going to be definitely one of the best in the league. So it'll be interesting to see Ed Oliver go up against those guys, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, Anthony Costanzo.
Plus with their extra tight end Jack Doyle. So I mean it's really, I mean they're the team that the Bills I think try to copy with the Lee Smith and all the tight end or all the offensive line additions. I mean it's literally they took their offensive line coach and
yeah, I mean we're definitely doing kind of a Walmart version of it, but
yeah,
nothing against Walmart.
I mean, you got Mark Lewinsky off of waivers from Seattle when that Seattle Tire Fire line, and he's like really good now. So,
no, that's definitely a good indication for them. But yeah, I would say that the two tight ends they have are better than anything we have by a lot.
Yeah. But they struck gold on a really good blocking tight end and a guy that borderline was a bust in Eric or at least not great in Eric Ebron. So
touchdowns are pretty lucky.
We'll see this
playing fantasy this year. I would not count on Eric Ebron to basically lead the league in touchdowns. Again.
Yeah, we'll see this DB situation there. I don't love their DB, so it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, obviously, we'll see how Rocky Sin is, and they picked up a couple other guys in the 4th and 5th round, so we'll see how that defensive back Malik Hooker is good. But I don't love their situation, Pierre Desser, and we'll see what they can bring to the table. So it'll be interesting to watch. I mean, they have a lot of young talent on DB, so we'll probably see a lot more of them than obviously starters. But I think that there's something to take away from that. And they obviously they have a couple of Justin Houston is a big name that they got from Kansas City. He's a guy we'll see how much they see of him and the Marcus Hunt. Marcus Hunt's been good since coming over from Cincinnati, and so we'll see how this looks. I mean, Jabal Sheard's a guy they have, obviously from New England. So there's some interesting names that I'm going to obviously some really good linebackers and Darius Leonard, who's I think one of the most underrated players in the league. Or was. I mean, I think he's finally getting some recognition there, but still underrated. I mean, a lot of people say he was like Defensive Player of the Year. So it'll be interesting to watch. We'll see a lot of Jacoby Brissett. Bills made the playoffs on Jacoby Brissett's snow game. So we'll see what we get out of Jacoby here going forward. So we'll probably see a lot of him. And like you said, I don't know if Chad Kelly's above Philip Walker or not, but
their unofficial depth chart has him
above Philip Walker.
Behind Philip Walker.
Okay.
They're excited with Philip Walker. But
okay, you're gonna see him.
I mean, Chad Kelly is like man number 20, 3,500 in the league right now. He is absolutely on his last thing, and he's really gonna have to work his way up into making a roster here. I think he's up against it, but you never know. Maybe this Andrew Luck thing lingers. Maybe Chad Kelly plays pretty well and ahead of Philip Walker.
Philip Walker gets hurt. There's ways on to the roster, so we'll see a lot of Jacoby Brissett and Philip Walker. Like you said, probably a lot of Deion Kane.
I think you'll see a lot of Chad too.
Yeah.
You don't think Jim's gonna come up and talk to the Colts coaching staff before the game? I mean,
yeah. We'll see what happens with that. Running back will be interesting. That's usually what you get pounded down your throat for a good quarter. I don't think they'll play Mac much. Nyheim Hines probably not much. Jordan Wilkins might sneak into a lot of time. Obviously, they just signed Foreman, so I don't know how much he's going to play, maybe a little. But Jonathan Williams might get a little bit of him, especially after the Keith Ford cut. Him versus Foreman really fighting for that final role there. So I like that this team doesn't use a special teams gunner at their running back position like Snorris Perry. Like they have guys that can each do something. Jordan Wilkins is a little bit something different than Hines does, a good pass catcher, different obviously than a workhorse like Mac. And then obviously Foreman and Jonathan Williams. Jonathan Williams potentially got cut because he didn't play special teams in Buffalo. So we'll see. I mean, Foreman's not going to play any special teams, so we'll see. I like that. I think that's how you use running back. You just don't use I don't have a problem with Perry. I just list him at something else, and I would be better. Just list him elsewhere, so then I can just get him off my running back mind and maybe have a spot for him on the team. Go against the linebackers or something, or the DBs. Like we're going to use 3 linebacker spots, but I just like that. I like looking at depth charts like the Colts when they have Hines and Wilkins were both young
running back.
Yeah, Mac who's coming on, and Foreman who
different roles. Yeah.
Foreman they took a shot on, and they took a shot on Jonathan Williams. So they're ability, either you keep 4 all running backs, or you're going to go 3 because you don't think your 4th and 5th are any good. But I just don't love using a roster spot in special teams running backs. I just don't love it. Like your Marcus Murphy's, at least even he had a little bit of offensive potential. But mean, I don't see anything out of using a roster spot in Sonoris Perry. Most people be like, why do you care about the 53rd man? I just think you can keep an actual running back, like especially if you're going to cut a TJ Yeldon. I think he does, something similar to like a Naeem Hines does. So we'll see how that all turns out. I think it'll be an interesting game. I think it's a good first test to play. Frank Reich team. There's a lot of good stories here, and be a good kids' day. So really excited for Thursday. There's a lot to look forward to in this this updated game, and do have to update the fans that Kevin switched to Spectrum today, in quite the not really wanting to fashion, but unfortunately I'm going to have to take a chance. And if I'm not at the game, I obviously need to have it. And DirecTV obviously is feuding over ABC and CBS. So did want to mention anyone who stuck along this far to let you know that I did switch to Spectrum. So that
I wish
should
I
be
could
fun.
say congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm going to take it as a congratulations anyways. So I know you guys love this content that we bring you, and Cover One does a great job of getting that content in. But, they do have an awesome app that pushes live great content too, and exclusive content if you go ahead and subscribe to that on cover1.net. So check that out. A lot of different levels with different content. All those shows get pushed to you. It's totally worth it in that Slack group that's growing. So you get a lot of fantasy stuff, and you get access to asking questions and content that you want written for you specifically. So check out that exclusive content on cover1.net. Question and answer time, Jason. We have a lot of good stuff today. Going to carve out probably a good final chunk of time here on this. And try not to miss anyone, but some of them are dupes. So we'll do our best to answer all your questions, and try not to, just because you're a dupe, I'll try to still shout you out. Bill's Mafia wants to know how much will the playing starters get on Thursday. Going with a quarter, Jason. You disagree or agree?
I think it could even be less.
Okay.
I think I'm trying to remember what we did last year. I think that I think they're getting a little scared on the injuries. We didn't really have anything for about a week, and then they all kind of came at the same time. It'll be interesting to see what even we call the starters in this game. We might even have a full quarter of it, but the starters just might not be a very full starting lineup. I could see an offensive lineman or two sitting out this, because what we don't want injured players. I mean, we could be down at least 3 tight ends, probably 2 at least.
Right.
So Tommy Sweeney, who probably isn't the first tight end, but certainly could end up playing a lot of it with Lee Smith. You look at the running backs. I mean, how much time you think LaShawn McCoy, Frank Gore are going to get?
Yeah.
Not that, even though Frank Gore's just a tank, Frank the Tank. But McCoy's not going to get much, if anything. He might not even suit up. And Gore, I think they'll run a couple times, and then it's just going to be the Singletary show because he's the rookie, and Yeldon because they have to figure out whether he's worthy of being in the team or not. And I think there's a couple places on defense too where that may be the case. So the more I think about it, as I'm just going off the dome, because I did not pre-screen these questions, I think that you probably get a full quarter, but I think you might only get half of a starting lineup just to start with anyways.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Next question is from Taylor. He wants to know, are we or are we not at the mercy of the development of Josh Allen? Lots of poor choices with the ball, and his own admittance of being a gunslinger makes me worry about how many INTs that are possible this coming year. Jason, are you worried? Are we at the mercy of Josh Allen, and are you worried?
Yes and yes, but it's not like grim. It's less grim than it used to be. He's a guy that I could see a future of being a star NFL quarterback or a franchise NFL quarterback or whatever. There's plenty of guys that we've tried to convince ourselves into who didn't even have close to that ceiling, including guys we've spent first round picks on. I mean, he's got to develop. He didn't start in the best position as far as his decision making. He seems smart enough to recognize that. He seems to work hard enough that if there is a way to improve your accuracy in decision making, he's somebody that should be able to do it. Obviously, he's got all the raw talent in the world with both his arm and his legs, as we figured out last year. But we are at the mercy of him. And when I go around and people know that I host a podcast and been a lifelong Bills fan. When people ask me, "Hey, we're gonna make the playoffs this year," I say, "If we have a good quarterback, I think we'll
Okay.
make the playoffs if we have a good quarterback, and if he's a bad quarterback, we won't."
Okay.
Um, I think
Yes.
that him being a bad quarterback, the turnovers he would give up, that would be a hard thing to overcome. There's a different type of average to bad quarterback that you might still be able to have a defense drag you to there. But if he has a truly bad season and doesn't progress at all decision making wise, we can't overcome that and make the playoffs. But if he's a good quarterback, we're a 9-7 team.
Okay.
That's where we
Fine.
go.
Speaking of having your own podcast, I guess I'm officially known as a Tyree Jackson lover. So Greg wants to know: is there any truth that I'm carrying his love child? Absolutely not. Man, how short time have you followed me? I did not appreciate his play for UB. I think he's got some talent
I
and
think
some.
Greg's followed you long enough to know that
Um,
this
I
has
just like that
changed.
who he is as a quarterback personally, what he can bring, and the developmental nature of him, rather than the Matt Leiners or the guys that are going to circle around and throw the ball in the air during the fourth preseason game. So we'll see. I mean, he's obviously playing against himself for anything, practice squad or roster. So I think he's got a lot to play for. I think he makes a guy that's been in camp since the spring, which is rare for us sometimes for our third quarterback. We didn't even have Derek Anderson or Matt Barkley into the year last year. So, and
Mhm.
they traded one of their quarterbacks in the competition. So I think that a guy that's been here since spring and playing in 4 preseason games and really getting the second team or in third teams, depending on what they're going to do with when Elam sits or not, he's going to have a lot of time to show, and I think he's going to start getting more and more used to this offense. So we'll see if that's enough, or if by the fourth game, even I'm like, yeah, he's practice squad, or nah, he's getting cut. We'll see, but I think that if they're keeping 2, I think unless Tyree's really bad, I think he's on the squad. And if he's decent, we'll see what happens there. So that's try to go all podcast without talking about him, but I guess that wasn't possible. Greg's real question, though: do you think John Feliciano to center full time to focus there in case of a Morse real problem with Morse, or let him continue to compete for right guard?
If you were able to do both, you would do both. I would. I don't really think that our best 5 linemen have Feliciano in it anyways. And I'm getting worried about Morris. I normally wouldn't be. I know that they're taking it cautiously, but the fact is, I don't know enough about concussions to tell you how far he is along this line right now. And you've seen concussions, whether it's in Buffalo or any sport or any team, that just take forever, that don't progress, that move at a weird speed, that can be reinitiated. I mean, that's before we even get to any sort of stuff about talking about CTE and all the science, and whether we're talking about subconcussions or real concussions or whatever. I know that multiple large concussions isn't good for your long-term health, and I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in how quickly this is really going to progress, because he can't just stretch it out. Like, he just waits. And I think you need to have probably more than any other position on the offensive line, you need to have a center that you feel good about. Now, unless their contingency is that Spencer Long's actually that guy, which doesn't sound like a good idea considering the way he played last year, or Bodine. Everybody saw the way he played last year. So if you think Feliciano's our second best center and you have any sort of doubt about Morse, I think that contingency plan's got to be there. And honestly, the line with either of those guys at center, Ford at guard, and Inseki at tackle is probably our best line anyways. So I say you get them prepared.
Okay. I mean, I don't have, so I guess I have a unique opinion on the Morse thing. I don't, he's like through the third stage and like into the fourth almost. Like, I don't, not a CTE scientist. I know a little bit about it, watched a few movies, a few documentaries. With the repetitions, what gets you. Obviously, bad concussions can get you, but if it was more serious, I really think the guy's not on the practice field. I think you would have different discussions. I need a little bit more to be a little bit worried. I keep Feliciano at right guard because I think that's where he's going to play. The second it could change. I mean, it's not like I can't change this opinion, but right now my opinion is he'll be back in a week or two. Like I really don't think there's
I
any
think that's
reason,
the most. I think that's the most likely outcome. I
and he'll be
just
fine. I mean,
I think that if you're unprepared at center this year, I mean, you can almost see it in practice already. You're gonna have a bad year. I would almost be overcautious with that position and develop something with my quarterback. if I had any doubt in my mind. But if I had to make a bet on it, yeah, I'd say Morris is going to play in the third preseason game. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I guess the dress rehearsal game. I think he'll be okay. I'm not really concerned about, especially watching him do some more and more each day. I think that I'd be worried if he wasn't even here. Then you might get worried. Me, I don't really see the over worry on Mitch on him at this point. So we'll see what happens. And then along those lines, we did have a question from Brett: should he retire? I don't have any indications of that. Obviously, we're not exposed to medicals and stuff like that. I just no, like I don't think so. He's on a huge deal. He's not like on a I hate football $3 million veteran deal like Vontae Davis was. I obviously he had this concussion coming into the offseason, still signed a major deal, felt the need to try it out. He'd owe all that money back. I don't see it. Like I just don't see it at this point of any indication that it's shorter or any longer than 2-3 weeks of just the normal protocol. But I think it's a little scary with two concussions, but back to back like this, but they happen. I mean, I don't know. Like the repetition of hits is what's more scary to me, and that's what causes CTE mostly. So I don't have an issue. So I don't think he's going to retire. I don't think he should. But the second, anything time he says his health's in danger or ruining his mental health or something along those lines, then yeah. But we'll see where this plays out. But at this stage, I'm firmly in the be here preseason week 3. So kind of the same answer we both had on that one. A few more here we'll take. How's the punter battle going? Something that the guys over at Cover One Buffalo coin Punter Palooza. I mean, by all accounts, I've seen Bajorquez as the number 1 punter. I think he's got a little more potential. Corey Carter, probably beat out Colton Schmidt in training camp last year and then got hurt. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're both going to get even time through these 4 preseason games, and that really matters when you can situationally punt, where you have returners, where you have blockers. Can't really replicate a lot of that. So they're just as much as anyone need these 4 preseason games. You agree?
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it's actually a good situation for them to have the entire preseason before they have to get cut. Usually your second punter was going to be your game 3 cut, and they're going to have the whole time to battle it out. But I haven't seen anything since this offseason has started where Bajorquez hasn't been the front guy. So
and he listed on the depth chart too.
Yeah, and he's listed in front on the depth chart. He was the guy who played for us last year, even if Carter was because of an injury. I think there were times that he looked better than Schmidt, but there also was no time last year where he was ahead of Colton Schmidt on any, depth chart.
The argument is maybe they would have taken Bajorquez anyways, even if Carter wasn't hurt.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So we'll see what happens there. If he has a bad preseason, there's no. I mean, Carter can win that easily, but I think right now Bajorquez is the guy. Like what he has now, I've liked his stuff. He was really getting used to it last season. I thought he was just coming on and then had a bad game and then went on IR. So we'll see. We'll see what Bajorquez we get, and if they make a move there, if they don't like either of them, I think that's possible. They could both have bad preseason and they go out and do what they did last year. So we'll see what and there's a new special teams coordinator, so we'll see how that amounts to something. Hugo wants to know, well, that was Hugo's question about the punter. So Taylor wants to know, how long does it take for this D to gel? Bell, Barkley, and Mixon to start the season. So he's referring to the running backs the Bills will face in weeks 1, 2, and 3. You worry about that stretch, and you think the D will be ready up for the task of that a pretty big running back gauntlet?
Yeah, that is an interesting start, and I'm not that worried about getting 180 rushing yards put on us. I do think that they create different matchups, and especially on the first 2, you're going to have a big receiving threat. We're going to have to see where Bella is at this point. He hasn't played a game in over a year. I don't necessarily think he probably spent all of offseason staying in the best shape in the world, so I think he may be moving along slowly. It's probably a good time to play a guy that hasn't played in a year. But I don't know that maybe he's going to be jacked up. But both those guys really are huge receiving threats out of the backfield. We're going to have to see where our coverage is at that point. Obviously, Milano's lauded for his ability to do that. Edmonds, I think, it's probably the only underrated part of his game right now. I think he's a pretty decent pass defender, and a lot of it just has to do with his size and his arm length. I think it really makes a huge difference in plays where he isn't even in perfect position, and I think he'll continue to get into better position. So regardless, yeah, and those guys, I don't think Mixon is super special, and also that offensive line has real problems. Like Bills last year trying to find a starter, real problems where you have six different guys competing for like a left guard spot because Clint Bowling retired.
Mm.
So I think, and on the other side having what's his name? I already forgot his name.
Where?
The guard, John Miller.
Yeah, John Miller. Yep.
Playing on the other side, like that's your solidified guard position, I believe. Yeah, I just don't think that team's going to be very good. They are looking more and more likely to not have AJ Green in that game too. If we're going to talk about full things, so we're looking at Andy Dalton and Tyler Boyd and mixing behind a bad line in the Bills home opener. So I'm not going to put too much worry in that game. I think we're going to win it. I think we're going to win it pretty easily. Those first two games, yeah, they go
2-1 in that stretch. I think that's my prediction. They go 2-1.
I think it'd be fine there. I would love if one of those first two games was a home game and we could think about going 3-0, but I'm not sure that we have the team to put together three great games in a row.
Unfortunately, you might have to make a real push for it. I mean, you might have to come out of that 3-0. I mean, they're not good.
No, when you play the Jets, Giants, and Bengals in a row, you really want to get those ones. So it'll be interesting. I think they did for not very good teams. Those are three bad teams, with the Jets maybe being an average team. They do have the good running back threats and have interesting threats in their offenses, but I think that we're going to be up to the challenge for it for the most part. But
I'm not worried.
It's almost like two pretty similar players at this point between Bell and Barkley in terms of how to scheme for them. So I think it'll be interesting to say the least.
I want to take two final Twitter questions because they reached out on Twitter. Interesting question for T-Love for UCLA is his handle. He wants to know, I can take this as well, what are your thoughts on players wearing Guardian helmet pads during practice in the NFL, especially for players who have concussion histories? My old high school team has been wearing for years in practice, and it eliminated concussions in practice. I also saw Texas A&M do that. Anything that makes it safer for these players, I'm on board for. I don't care if it looks goofy or for whatever the argument against it is. Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Definitely for people with concussion history, should have to do it or at least really consider it. And I think people who are interested in not getting concussions should also do it. I'm on board for any new technology, any new thoughts, any new ideas on making it safer for concussions, especially. Can't prevent fluke ACL tears and fluke Achilles things. I don't know how crazy you can get into that, but when it comes to concussions, yeah, I mean, anything you can do to keep these guys safe and prevent them from having long-term degenerative issues.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't done the research on them to tell you how much. I'm just looking through the stats right now because I'm not super familiar with them. I haven't been on the field in a long time, but they seem to have the stats to say that it improves, absorbs collisions and all of that. Okay. What they look like doesn't matter at all.
What's the negative? Is there a negative argument? Like why? Is there a counter? Or no?
I can't tell you with enough research. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I'm looking at these right now, and I think it's just something that hasn't been implemented yet.
Okay. Well, if it keeps players like more safe and others, especially on the OD lines, I don't know why you'd argue against it unless there's some crazy
certainly thing. Looks like from the design that's where you'd really probably do most of your work. If they had those, because it's more of a padded cover, and it seems like that would have the maximum improvement on the offensive and defensive line, where again most of your CTE and all of that stuff's happening because you have to hit somebody on the other side every play with your head. So
it looks goofy. It looks like you're playing football in the 1950s, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of. So I guess that's the problem. If players really care, I don't know. I think it's saying safe is important, or if what side of the argument, if it's the CB or the specific players association or what, like who was against that. But it starts with college always. So big time college programs like A&M and others. We'll see. I mean, I think that should be a growing thing, especially if these guys start retiring, these young linemen, Isaac Asiata and others. I think because we had a Davis retire last year, Isaac Asiata retire. We've had a couple others in the past. That's the worry about Morse, but I'm just not there yet with the worry of the retirement and anything to help these guys stay safe. And then one final question from Lefty Lucy, his at Lefty Lucy 2. So there's a Lefty Lucy 1 because he's Lefty Lucy 2. But rank our offensive linemen from first to worst. I don't know if he wants us to do the entire. This will kind of be the last segment. If he wants to do the entire, and there's like 15 plus, or get more realistic to make the team. Do it quickly. And then you can jump in from worst to first. I guess I'll take 1 second to do the majority here. So Garrett McGinn would kind of be my last guy. Nico Siragusa would be second to last. Then as you climb up the ladder, then I'm going to have to go Vlad Dukas. Then I'm going to have to go, obviously I'm not going to include Waddell because he's hurt now, but DeAndre Wesley then Ike Butker, then Connor McDermott. So that's kind of interchangeable there for me. I think I like Butker more. So I'm just going to go McDermott, then Butker, then Bodine, then Teller, then Spencer Long, then Nseki, then Feliciano. This is hard as you get to like the starters. Then Cody Ford.
We've already gone this far. We got Ford, Morris, Dawkins, and Spain left.
Yeah, Ford, just because he's unproven, but we'll see if he can rise in this.
Did you say Wyatt Teller?
I may have forgotten Teller, but I'm going to put him. We'll backtrack because we're going to go Wyatt Teller right before Nseki, so eighth. Because I have Feliciano sixth, and then Nseki seventh yet, and then Wyatt Teller eighth. I'm going to go Ford fifth, or is that fourth? Is that up to four?
Yeah, because you already used Long, and you've already used all the right guards.
Okay, so Ford 4, Dawkins 3, Spain 2, Morris 1. That's I guess where I'm at. It'll be a little bit easier, closer to cut down day, but that's my top. Is that 15 guys? 1, 2. If you take out Waddell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 15. So what's yours look like?
Oh, I don't want to do all that.
I agree. You disagree. Where would you deserve?
I honestly think Connor McDermott's at the bottom almost.
Okay.
I haven't seen enough Garrett McGinn, but as far as the veteran guys go, I might have him even behind Dukas. Well, I haven't seen any McGinn. I haven't seen any Siragusa. He was a 4th round pick.
Wesley?
Who was in free agency. But he'd be in the same. I'd probably put Wesley ahead of him.
Okay, yeah.
And then probably Dukas and Bodine too. And I'm not thrilled with those guys either. And then after that, but I would have Boker ahead of all those guys.
Yep.
I think
Boker ahead of all those guys. The roster, so I could watch out.
Well, yeah, and I think their versatility, of course, gets talked about and why they keep getting brought back. Because I think Wesley's a guy that could move inside too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he is. He was at guard when big monster guy when he that big Ed Oliver clip of him going against Wesley when he was playing guard.
Oh yeah.
So yes, the versatility might make him that 9th guy. So we'll see. And I think Butker they play across the line too. So interesting. It'll be those two against McDermott as the line sits for that last spot to me with Waddell out. And them not bringing someone in. I don't know that Sam Young changes the game unless it's someone a little better. They make a trade
if you're keeping McDermott, then I might welcome Sam Young just as a guy with experience who's
probably if McDermott's the guy. I don't know that I hate Young and would be cheaper Butker enough to cut him. I don't know. I might just go Butker because I like him more than 32-year-old Sam Young on an $800K deal when you can have him at $400K. It's rollover money. All right. I think that's an interesting exercise. Maybe we'll revisit that. We'll see how that changes. I just jotted mine down. So we'll see if this changes by preseason week 4 as some of these guys are.
It's going to help. I mean, preseason games are going to help me because I'm going to watch those. I'm going to watch those multiple times. I've been to one practice. I've seen a lot of clips, but certainly I'm not a miracle man. I can only see what I saw in one practice, and then other than that, they're not showing you much as far as the offensive line goes. So That's where I'm going to spend a lot of my time is on the offensive and defensive lines, where I've seen less of them in practice because they don't get in highlights, and also you just see less physicality
Okay.
until the pads really came on. So those are definitely good places to look, just in general with any preseason game.
I agree. And then they'll probably sit the 6 or 7 that are for sure on the roster. So you might only get people competing for 2 roster spots there. Like you'll probably see Wyatt Teller. You'll probably, and then see the guys who just mentioned, the 3 most likely to make the roster. So that'll be interesting, Jason. That'll actually be part of what makes it'll be fun. Tyree Jackson might have some decent protectors in there in that 4th preseason game. So we'll see how that works out. Better than normal. And these guys, there'll be at least 2 or 3 guys rosterable playing in that game compared to 0 that we normally have. So, and probably some wide receiver and some running back talent. So that preseason game week 4, can't wait for it. Actually, I'm excited to see. I like watching those bottom of the roster guys. But another really action-packed show. Went over a lot of stuff. Hope you guys stuck with us through question and answers. And always, we'll probably make this a common thing on the Monday show to do Q&A, and then Thursday. This week it'll be Friday, by the way, guys, because the game, and I'll be taking notes. And if weather's good, we'll be there. Looks like thunderstorms. It'll make that thing interesting, Jason. But if the weather's clear, I'll be there. So I'll be jotting down notes when be able to record there. So that'll be a Friday show to kind of recap that, and then I guess we'll stick Friday, Monday, right into the next week, and there'll be some live practices down in Spartanburg, right? Aren't they playing at Wofford College? So that'll be cool. So we'll get into that next week. But really great as always. Really thank you guys for sticking with us for this hour show from the Kevin and Jason show. I'm Kevin, and that's Jason.
Thanks, guys.